Good morning, good morning, good morning. I did it again. I did it again. I clicked record and my mic was off. It's the habits. You would think that you're intending to come down to record and broadcast yourself out to the world, into the universe. The device that you use to speak into might work a little better if it's on. Anyway, that level of humility aside, it's interesting. I think because I'm mostly an optimistic versus a pessimistic person, I like to look at, opposite ends of the spectrum. Certainly, I can get angry, like we all can get angry. And I've had times when I'm doing something and recording or I'm scripting. Like I've gone through scripting, and because the way the program I use works, I've accidentally deleted the entire script, and there's no like control Z undo. And that, you talk about anger, that'll make you angry. And then there's the reality that I got to walk away and the script's not coming back. That takes a little while to come back down to emotionally. This here, back to my optimistic view of life. I can kind of remember what I was saying on the last live stream, and it wasn't anything that I would want to listen to. So I think that maybe it's not anything anybody else would want to listen to. So God and universe had the mic off because they're like, you need a little while to get settled in. And maybe that's a note and a takeaway for future days and episodes, that maybe I, after my prayer and meditation, I want to sort of collect myself before I click record, make sure the mic is on, and I'll have a better experience. In any event, day three of, I'm still finding a title for this. I sort of was going through my vidIQ. I use vidIQ to help try to optimize my YouTube content. Usually for titles, I find that I don't necessarily struggle with titles, but I guess I'm conscious, and it is sort of in, I don't want to use the word insecurity, but as I'm gaining the knowledge and the wisdom of how to promote content, how to label content to make it appealing. I think I talked about this yesterday. Can't be totally ignorant to how the world works. Like there's a way I want to produce content, and there's a way that I want to script out and write and title my things that make me feel good. Like, yeah, I like this. This is dope. But I can't be selfish in that if the content was only for me, then I wouldn't broadcast. I wouldn't post it. I wouldn't. I wouldn't, with intention, go out and try to make it or be an influencer. I guess I'm still getting comfortable with that word. But the reality is this: it's not just for me. It is for me, but it's not just for me. The way self improvement is not just for me. It's for everyone that's around me who is impacted by my life. It's for all the versions I am with my life. It's for the spouse I am, the father I am, the professional I am, the regular dude I am. It's for the legacy of tradition with my family. It's for where I've come from. It's for where I am now. It's for community. It's for who I'll be in the future. But I say all that to say, I reference that because I'm trying to get into the balance of, how do I ensure I'm doing me? Because this is the do you rules, right? I'm doing me in a way that makes me feel good about doing me, because I got to live with myself. But also, I can't be naive and ignorant to the fact that if I'm going to do this, the way that in my profession, when I manage and coach people and teams, it's not just me. It's not just me, but I'm required. There's that balance. The same way there's the balance of, I can be very pessimistic that I don't know what I'm doing right now. I don't know that this is going to work. I don't know that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I feel like an idiot. I feel very uncomfortable, and on and on and on, stacking these emotional difficulties that come with anything new, anything. Like when you're on self improvement, it's not necessarily that you don't know what you're doing, but you're learning about what you're doing to yourself. What is it? What's going to happen to me when I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning? Which now, in order to be here at 4:28, which I started around 4:15ish. I got to get up at 3:30. All these changes you start to make with your life, you certainly want to be optimistic about it, because why not have an optimistic view? But you can't negate the pessimism. And if you go through any of the dualities of life, you do any research in the literature and things of that nature, and you just come to, I had this sort of this epiphany. I go through in my mind, I rehearse in my mind the way, let's say, an athlete would practice, right? Like a basketball player before he gets to the free throw line in the clutch, or he or she gets to the free throw line in a clutch game. You don't want that to be your first free throw, right? Especially with the crowd going crazy. The likelihood of you could be as optimistic as you want, but the likelihood of you being successful, it dims. It dims quite a lot. And so I thought about, if someone was to ask me, how would you frame, I guess, your channel, or how would you frame what you do, the self-improvement classification? Because I continue to urge myself towards not wanting to have a standard description. There I go again, fighting that battle between it's self-improvement, it's coaching, it's growth, it's inspiration, it's motivation, it's spirituality, it's God. But yet I hate being along the lines of those cliche labels, but yet I'm cliche Jeff. And I know a lot of this has already been said, a lot of it has already been done, and maybe I'll discover something new. Maybe I won't, but that's part of the process. But back to my point, as far as rehearsing and what I think I'm going to continue to drive this conversation towards, I want to be cognizant of time. Set a 15-minute timer. I might go over. I certainly don't want to go past 5 a.m. because I do want to go out for my morning run. I think that when I don't get outside early, and I know there's some, if you follow Huberman or anything like that around the neurosciences, there's a huge benefit to getting sunlight early in the morning. I don't quite get sunlight because the sun doesn't come up when I go out. But there's what I would, I guess, call a spiritual component and element to being outside early. If I haven't already been clear about who I am and what I do professionally, I work remotely. So if I don't get outside, I start to feel very uncomfortable about who I am, and what I get kind of sort of, I don't know what's the actual term. I don't think it's cabin fever, but I don't like just being in my house. Even though I work remotely, I love being in my house. I don't like it makes me feel restricted. So I got to get out for my run this morning, and I would take you with me. I don't know that I want to record myself running. In any event, what I was saying was this. As we get into, and I guess I'll use that as leverage: pessimism, optimism, the labeling, what you're doing, self-improvement, layering, adding things, and how you can feel confident. When I was rehearsing and going through the question of, Jeff, like, what do you do? Describe your channel in the simplest form to me. I think about my kids. My daughters, give me the short version. I would say that my intention is to be philosophically logical or logically philosophical. Those two elements and components are, I believe, at least for me, and here I go again because it got to be about me, but I also want to help you as I'm doing me, and maybe this relates to you or not. Philosophy is critical to me because I believe a lot of the philosophy eventually drives you towards a higher being. I think philosophically, when you start to think about who you are and you get into the essence of your being, and I talked yesterday about your corporeal form, your physical body, the essence of all the reality that we see with our senses, or we don't just see, but that we pick up and align and identify with our sensory capabilities. It'll drive you eventually towards the questioning of, I was reading something yesterday along the lines of, I am such an imperfect being. However, I believe that I come from the most perfect of creations with the most perfect of intent. I am finite, yet I come from the infinite because I believe that God is all and God is everything, and I am of God. And once I'm accepting of that, I can start to figure out why God actually put me here and realize what God actually gave me versus so much so what he didn't give me, which is a lot of you go back to what I talked about philosophically, getting outside of what we see constantly, because what we see is such an intense stimulant to how we feel. So I think it's natural, the evolution and the progression of yourself, to seek something more. And I think philosophy drives you towards that. And pick a philosopher, any philosopher. It's relevant if you go deep. I've gotten on some of the standard philosophy books like Meditations and Marcus Aurelius. I'm reading something now. I think it's Descartes. I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but he's a French philosopher. I think if you look at people today, certainly Jordan Peterson, I think is more of a philosopher for today's era. I got to start bringing chapstick down with me. I remember the water. That was the other thing I wanted to remember, was the chapstick. But philosophy for me, and I think about after I read this book, I got Jordan Peterson's book as a gift for Christmas. I believe it's called We Who Wrestle with God. I can't wait to read that book. But think about that. When you get into I believe philosophy, it drives you right towards God. And having been raised standard through Catholicism and Western culture and Jesus and God in that way, and having read the Bible essentially cover to cover, probably about 98% of it. There are some things I skipped over and still some things I need to go back. And still some things that you read but forgot that you read because it's a long book to read. But you start to think about those things. And I believe, for what I want to do for me and for this channel, it'll always be the core. God is the core of what I do. And philosophically, it helps drive me towards how I want to believe in God. Because I think I was reading some comments on a post. I fight this because I don't want to be that dude. God is obviously a very hot topic, and everybody has, not everybody, but those who believe choose how they believe. And I'm not here to tell you you're right or wrong about your belief. I just have different beliefs. And part of what my belief for God is, if I can encourage anyone in any way, it's to ensure that you believe in God the way you want to believe in God because of how you believe in God. That's all. Take that for what it's worth. Innuendo. Is there an innuendo? Is there something, kind of, maybe? I would just say, in my experience, having been raised church every Sunday in a very Hispanic driven, the 80s, Hispanics and God, the way I was exposed is big. Like my grandmother from my father's side, she only ever hit me once. And kids will tell you, growing up in my era, you got the shit beat out of you a lot of times. Yeah, that's true. That's true. And it was for all good intent, I believe, because again, we're on an optimistic, not pessimistic view. The one time my grandmother from my father's side reached all the way back and let me have it was, I said something to her in the kitchen while she was cooking one of my favorite. She was making me plantains, maduros. They're the sweet plantains. And she said something to me, and I said something back to her along the lines of, God is not real anyway. And wham, slapped the shit out of me. That was not allowed. In any event, coming from that, reintroducing myself to God, broadening my perspective of God, was life-changing for me. I don't know that I would be here without it. I wouldn't be. As a matter of fact, I know for a fact I wouldn't be here without it. So there's that level. Philosophically, I believe it drives you to God. And God is all, and God is great. And it's dope to have God in your life. It is for me the way I have it, and it drives me towards who I want to be and where I want to be more often than not. Cool. The logic. This could come from the fact that I work in a logical field. I work IT, information technology. That's part of the logic, that I don't want to assume that because I know what I'm talking about, that you know what I'm talking about, and that IT is, we think it's universal. That's my thing with logic, is we start to have these beliefs that what we believe is true because we believe it, and because we believe it, nothing else can be true. It's difficult. But at the same time, there are some things, there are some truths that just line up the way an information technology system would work, down to the power. Like if you don't plug in a system, like you might have some wireless things, but they connect to things that are not necessarily wireless. There's infrastructure. There's even you talk about the cloud. The cloud was, but there's data centers and there's hardware that if not plugged in properly and they don't follow the proper cabling all the way down to the cable, you know it. Like you go home and you if you don't plug in your router correctly, you have no internet. But yet your phone, you walk around with it, it connects to that router. That router has a cable that goes all the way outside, and we all know this rudimentary. Again, there you go, we all. But the power of logic for me is simply this. 1 + 1 is always going to give you 2, at least the way we taught. I don't know that we can change math in that way. And so logic for me becomes very, I guess, rudimentary, but it's foundational the way philosophy is foundational, the way God is foundational, and that there are some things that are just logical. Like if you come with me on this 1,000, if we do this together, if we do more things together, we'd be such a greater place. I know, cheesy, corny, maybe not promoted these days, but I feel greatly about it. But if we go on this 1,000-hour journey of self-improvement, this is logic, this is math, this is 1 and 1 and 1 and 1 and 1 until you get to 1,000. But let me not even go where I was going to go as far as like you got to put the effort. There's just a logic to if I put in 1,000 hours, I'm going to get better. Even if, because I was going to say effort is required. Effort is required. Effort, you got to be intense. You don't have to be. There goes the words. You should really be intense about what you're doing. If you're going to put in 1,000 weak hours, you'll still get a result. You'll still get a result, but it'll be weaker than it would if you put in 1,000 really hard hours. Now, I get that that's difficult to do because when you first start, like this is day 3 for me, hyped. Let's get to day 100. The motivation, the inspiration, the excitement, it wanes. And that's when you really start to find out about yourself. I'm cliche Jeff for a reason. You've probably heard this. There isn't a lot of things I could tell you that you probably haven't already heard. The difference is discovering it for yourself. Discovering it for yourself. So the logic says, if you put in 1,000 hours of self-improvement, you will get better. The logic also says, the higher the effort for the 1,000 hours, the higher the result. In life, it's one of the things I have at least 1.5 friends. In life, you don't get what you feel you deserve. You get what you negotiate. So 1,000 hours for us, for me, for the Do You rules, I'm negotiating with life. And it goes back to my philosophy. I negotiate with God all the time. I'm always negotiating. Everything is up for negotiation. If I'm looking for a result, again, I'm cautious about what I talk about. Be careful with your expectations. I'm not saying don't go ask for the $1 million. What I'm saying, though, is how do you negotiate those wins to get the million, right? I would argue you shouldn't focus just on the million. You focus on the work it requires. Again, you've heard this. It's the process. It's the process. It's the process. How do you build that process? Well, you got to negotiate. You got to always negotiate. You got to negotiate your mindset. You got to negotiate your physical effort. You got to negotiate the connection internally, the harmonious and integrated process of mind, body, and spirit. You got to negotiate with God. You got to at least for me, right? You got to negotiate the level of effort. And it goes back to, it's 4:42 a.m. I've been up since 3:30. I'm not saying it for effect. It doesn't make me better than you. Don't get all in your feelings and emotions about, oh, you ain't no. Yeah, I'm nobody. But I know this. The more I negotiate 3:30 a.m. wake-ups and I pray until 4 o'clock and I get into my cardio, I get into my lifting, I take care. When I do these things, I'm negotiating with life. So if I put in a physical commitment to say I want to get a certain amount of strength or I want to have a certain physical aspect and quality, I got to negotiate that by doing the work. That's all. I put in the work. The more I run, the more I lift, the more my physical is taken care of. The more I read, the more I journal, the more I watch content that is along the lines of what I want to input, the more I can output that same rationale and logic. It's not this is all logical. There should be no confusion as to how to negotiate. And therefore, when I'm able to have my conversations with God, it's less about asking, right? About what I want. God knows what I want. And I've come to the realization at this point, I know what God wants for me. And it might change. It might change because I don't know what's going to happen from day to day. Life is also, as I'm negotiating with life, life is negotiating with me. As I'm putting into life, life is also putting back into me. As I'm giving to God, God is also giving back to me, right? There goes the logic. Sort of philosophically logical, logically philosophical. And so the investment, the constant investment of 1,000 hours, remaining pessimistic versus optimistic, although there's going to be some days. Like, I didn't know what was going to happen today. I didn't know what was going to happen when I clicked record. I didn't necessarily know specifically what I would talk about. I don't know how I would drive this conversation. But it goes back to also, I got to have faith. Philosophically, the more faith I have, the more easy it is to apply logic. And so, that felt good. That felt good for me. If you watch this or you're watching, I hope it felt good for you. But the pessimistic versus optimistic view, why not believe that it's not that it's going to work out or that it will work out, right? Because the tense, past tense, future tense, why not that it is working out? It is working out. I'd rather have that thought. I'd rather have that mindset. I'd rather have that approach. There goes my alarm. It's 4:45. I can't wait to get outside. I can't wait to get outside. I can't wait to get outside. Let me close this out. Why not? Right? Why not? Why not? Why not? Is day 3 the reality to where you might be with day 3? That's nasty, right? Excuse me. The reality, sorry, as to where you might be with day 3 is just still in this sort of stage of it's easy to have motivation because it's still new, but it's easy to feel insecure because you're trying to figure out it's not necessarily what you should be doing, but is what I'm about to do worth it? Is what I'm about to do worth it? And I can't really answer that for you. I can't tell you it is or it isn't. I don't believe I'm anyone to tell anybody. I'm going to keep saying this until I'm blue in the face. I don't know the answers for you. I don't know the answer for you in literal language as far as, yes, go do this. That's one of the things that irks me too, as far as, I get it. We got to sell something. Like, why would you want to listen to me if I can't tell you exactly what to do? And I wrap it up into you just got to do you. But that's what it is. What do you feel like? It's the discovery. When I talked about finding God, when you find God in your way, how do you want to find yourself? What are the attributes? This is, you can craft these things. There's certain, you can logically debate if you do, the chemistry and the genes, the genetics of who you are dictate how a lot of the results will happen for you, or dictate how fast you are, how high you could jump, how tall you are, etc. Those things, all right, those are non-negotiable. Those just are what they are. But your characteristics, your character, your life character, how do you want to build it? What are the things you want? Because to achieve it and attain it, the logic's already there. You don't have time, wake up earlier. Go to sleep earlier. You're not strong enough, you got to lift. You're not smart enough, I hate that word too. You got to do more research. You want to have an impact, you got to take more risks. You want a big reward, you got to take bigger risks. You want to succeed at scale, you got to be massively vulnerable. You want to win, You want to win? You got to lose. You got to fail. You got to not know what you're doing a lot of the times in order to learn what to do. And then the minute you think you know, like you're like, yes, I'm locked in. I know what to do. Guess what got to happen? You got to do a little bit more. Because if you don't, you'll stay stuck at wherever you find that place of, all right, now I'm where I need to be. And if you do nothing, you'll flatline at some point somewhere. And for me, that's not where I want to be. So I constantly seek the discomfort. I constantly seek the change. I constantly seek to put in just a little more effort to see what might happen. Because why not? Because why not? In any event, this is day 3. I'm going to go get it in and pound out on that pavement. Enjoy what the universe and life has to offer me as we approach 5 a.m. It's 4:49. But what a life, man. What a life. What a life. Do you always stay rich.